Tick-tock. The old analog clock on the wall showed 10 p.m., the hour hand dead on the mark. Every swing of the pendulum was a sledgehammer against my heart. My name is Ethan Cole. I stood in the kitchen, a faded apron tied around my waist, silently slicing an apple. From the living room, I could hear the tinkling laughter of my so-called wife, Vanessa Thorne, punctuated by the crude jokes of a man. "Careful, honey, you're tickling me." "Ah, you're just so smooth, Nessa. Has that pathetic loser of yours ever been lucky enough to touch this skin?" Don't even mention that waste of space. It ruins my appetite. Let him touch me. I'd rather die." Vanessa's voice dripped with undisguised contempt. "He's nothing but a dog we keep around the house." "No, even a dog is more useful. At least it can bark at intruders." Then came the voice of my so-called daughter, Caitlin, sharp and venomous. "Uncle Rick is right. My mom would never let a loser like that lay a hand on her. Mom, why don't you and Uncle Rick just go to your room? Stop paying attention to that thing pretending to be alive in the kitchen. It's depressing just looking at him." "That's my girl." The man's voice boomed, full of pride. My face was a mask of indifference. The fruit knife in my hand moved with precision, dicing the apple into perfectly uniform cubes before arranging them on a delicate platter. 10 years. 3,650 days. I had long since grown accustomed to these words, these scenes. My heart was as still as a frozen lake. They thought I was a pathetic pushover, a man who would tolerate any humiliation for a roof over his head. They didn't know about the crimson countdown timer superimposed on my vision, a display only I could see. Sole contract time remaining. 0 years, 0 months, 0 days, 1 hours, 59 minutes, 34 seconds. 10 years ago, I wasn't from this world. I once had a perfect family, a loving wife named Ellie, and an adorable daughter named Lily. We had a promise. For Lily's 5th birthday, we would take her to the biggest Disney theme park in the world. But a sudden plane crash stole everything from me. That day, a last-minute emergency meeting had forced me to change my flight. I could only watch, helpless, as the news broadcast showed their plane becoming a fireball in the sky. Overcome with grief, I spent 3 days and 3 nights at their graveside without food or water. Just as I was about to break, a being calling itself the Abyssal Trader found me. It gave me a choice: trade 10 years of my life and my dignity to play a designated role in a parallel world, enduring all the mental anguish inflicted by specific targets. If I completed the contract, it would use the power of causality to reverse time and pull my wife and daughter back from the brink of death. I agreed without a moment's hesitation. And so, I came to this world, becoming a man who was also named Ethan Cole. The role I had to play was Vanessa Thorne's husband and Caitlin Thorne's father, a complete and utter doormat. The Abyssal Trader explained that the Vanessa and Caitlin of this world were negative mirror entities on a causal chain, filled with a deep-seated hatred for family and responsibility. The torment I needed to endure was this very extreme negative emotional energy, which would serve as the fuel to resurrect my wife and daughter. The more they humiliated me, the more they trampled on my dignity, the more energy I would accumulate, and the higher the chance of success. So, for 10 years, I let Vanessa bring home a revolving door of men. I endured Caitlin's scorn and vicious insults. I did all the housework, survived on a meager allowance, and wore clothes from thrift stores, living like a ghost in my own home. The neighbors whispered behind my back, calling me Crestfall City's most pathetic man. Colleagues at the part-time jobs I took mocked me, calling me a spineless cuckold. I didn't care, because I knew none of it was real. My home was in another world. My love was waiting for me to return. "Hey, is the fruit ready yet? Are you trying to piss me off?" Vanessa's impatient voice yelled from the living room. I picked up the fruit platter and walked out, head bowed as always. On the living room sofa, Vanessa was curled up in the arms of a fat, greasy-faced middle-aged man. His name was Rick Wagner, one of her more regular lovers, the owner of a small company who was generous with his money. Caitlin sat nearby, scrolling through her phone, shooting me a disdainful look from the corner of her eye. She was 17, a teenager who channeled all her rebellion and cruelty directly at me. I gently placed the platter on the coffee table. "Enjoy," I said softly. Rick popped a piece of apple into Vanessa's mouth, then reached out and patted my cheek with his greasy hand. It was a demeaning gesture, harder than a friendly tap. Look at you, Ethan. You've really perfected the art of being a doormat. If I were you, I'd have jumped off a bridge years ago. I kept my head down and said nothing. Vanessa giggled, wrapping her arms around Rick's neck. Oh, don't mind him, Rick. He's just a loser. Let's go to the bedroom. I bought some new lingerie. I want to show you. Huh. I like the sound of that. Rick's eyes narrowed into slits as he laughed. He stood up, his arm around Vanessa, and deliberately shoved me as he walked past. Caitlin didn't even look up from her phone. Such a pathetic loser, she muttered. It's embarrassing. I remained silent, quietly cleaning up the mess on the coffee table. Only when they had all disappeared into the bedroom, and I was alone in the living room, did I slowly raise my head. There wasn't a ripple of emotion in my eyes. Pain, anger, there was once. In the first year or two, I was on the verge of a mental breakdown almost daily. But whenever I wanted to give up, Ellie's gentle smile and Lily's sweet voice would echo in my mind. Daddy, Daddy, when are you coming home? So, I buried every emotion in the deepest part of my soul. I told myself it was all an act, a performance that would last 10 years. I was an actor, and now the play was about to end. I raised my hand, my eyes fixed on the timer in my vision. 10 minutes and 5 seconds, 10 minutes left. I walked out to the balcony and lit a cigarette, my only solace for the past decade. The night wind was cool against my skin. Below, the city lights twinkled, a million points of light, but not one of them was for me. I took a long drag and exhaled slowly. Through the smoke, my gaze sharpened, the glint of a blade that had been dormant for 10 years, now ready to be unsheathed. Vanessa's wanton laughter echoed from the bedroom again. I ignored it, my focus entirely on the countdown. 1 minute, 59 seconds, 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. As the final second ticked to 0, a cold, majestic voice exploded in my mind. Soul contract complete. Energy collection, 120%, quota exceeded. Releasing worldly restrictions. Success. Restoring host's soul origin. Success. Activating causality armament. Success. Boom. An indescribable, cataclysmic power erupted within me, like a volcano that had slumbered for 1 billion years. Every cell in my body sang as the energy surged through my veins. The feeling was like a diver, trapped in the crushing depths of the ocean, finally breaking free of his chains and taking his first breath of fresh air at the surface. For 10 years, my power had been suppressed by the laws of this world. My true soul, my traveler's essence, everything I'd sealed away to protect myself. In this instant, it all came roaring back. My posture straightened, the meek, hunched figure gone forever. My eyes, once dull and lifeless, now held the depth of a starry night. I crushed the cigarette, but under my shoe, a cold smirk playing on my lips. Lily, I'm coming. I turned around and walked back into the apartment. The game was over. Now it was time to settle the score. When I stepped back into the living room, my entire presence had changed. If before I was a dull blade hidden in a sheath, now I was a legendary weapon, honed by battle and thirsty for blood. Just then, the bedroom door creaked open. Vanessa emerged, wrapped in a silk towel, her hair damp and draped over her shoulders. Her face was flushed with post-coital satisfaction as she sauntered to the fridge for a drink. Her eyes fell on me, and she froze. Why are you still standing there? She frowned, but then she noticed something was wrong. The Ethan before her stood ramrod straight, like a spear. His eyes were no longer evasive and numb. They were cold and detached, staring at her with an unnerving stillness, as if he were looking at an inanimate object. What are you looking at? You got a problem, loser. Vanessa felt a prickle of unease under my gaze and instinctively snapped at me. I didn't speak, just continued to watch her. For 10 years, this face had hurled the most vicious words at me, committed the most shameless acts. I had fantasized countless times about the day the contract would end, how I would make her pay. But now that the moment was here, all I felt was a profound sense of calm. Because she wasn't worth it. She wasn't worthy of my anger, not even my hatred. She and her so-called daughter were nothing more than pebbles on my path home. Now that I had stepped over them, there was no need to look back. Ethan, Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. Seeing me ignore her, Vanessa's anger flared. She stalked forward, raising her hand to slap me, a habit she'd developed over the last decade. Whenever she was the slightest bit annoyed, she'd lash out. This time, however, her wrist was caught in midair. My hand closed around it like a vice, immobilizing her completely. Vanessa's expression shifted from shock to fury, with an undercurrent of fear she didn't even recognize in herself. You dare to touch me? Ethan, you pathetic loser. Are you trying to start a rebellion? She shrieked. My gaze drifted down to her wrist, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. Get your filthy hand away from me. You! I applied the slightest pressure. Vanessa cried out in pain, her face turning pale. It felt like the bones in her wrist were about to be crushed. How was this possible? Where did this spineless weakling get this kind of strength? Let go. Ethan, are you crazy? She stammered, struggling in terror. I released her, my hand dropping to my side as if I had just brushed away a piece of lint. Vanessa stumbled back, clutching her reddening wrist, her eyes wide with disbelief. Hearing the commotion, Rick Wagner stormed out of the bedroom, wearing nothing but a pair of boxer shorts. Seeing the scene, he flew into a rage. Well, Ethan, growing a pair are we. You dare touch my woman? You must have a death wish. With that, he swung a beefy fist at my face. In his mind, I was still the same pushover who wouldn't fight back. This punch would be enough to leave me bloody and begging for mercy on the floor. I didn't even bother to look up, simply raising my left hand. Thud! His massive fist was stopped dead by my open palm. The impact was a dull, heavy sound. Rick's enraged expression instantly contorted into a mask of agony. It felt like he had punched a steel plate. A sickening crack echoed through the room as the bones in his hand shattered from the force of the rebound. Ayahak! He let out a primal scream, cradling his broken hand as he collapsed to the floor, writhing in pain. Vanessa was completely stunned. Caitlin, drawn by the noise, peeked out of her room. Her jaw dropped at the sight before her. Was this really the same pathetic Ethan they had bullied for years? I looked down at Rick, who was still howling on the floor. My eyes were ice. So this was the man Vanessa was so proud of? Nothing but a posturing coward. Annoying. I slowly lifted my foot and brought it down on his other wrist. Crack! Another sharp snap of breaking bone. Aya Aghag! Rick's screams grew even more piercing, nearly loud enough to shatter the windows. My hand. He broke my other hand. Pain and fear sent tears and snot streaming down his face. Vanessa and Caitlin were paralyzed with fear, their faces ashen. They had never seen this side of Ethan, cold, decisive, like a demon clawed up from the depths of hell. Ethan, what are you doing? Vanessa's voice trembled. I slowly retracted my foot, not giving the man on the floor another glance. My attention shifted to her. Pack your things. I want you out of this house by morning. This apartment had been left to my body's original owner by his parents. Vanessa and her daughter were merely squatters. What? Vanessa looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. You want us to leave? Ethan, are you insane? This is my home. Your home. I scoffed, my voice thick with sarcasm. Do I need to remind you whose name is on the deed to this place? The color drained from Vanessa's face. Of course, she knew the apartment was legally in Ethan's name. But after 10 years, she had come to see it as her own, and him as a parasite living off her. Don't forget, we're married. This is marital property, she blustered. Mary, I took a slow step toward her, each footfall a hammer blow against her heart. Ask yourself, in the last 10 years, have you acted like a wife for a single day? Vanessa, you're nothing but a tramp who brings strange men back to another person's home. The words were a razor-sharp blade, gutting her pride. Her greatest satisfaction had come from having me completely under her thumb. But now, this loser was exposing the ugliest truths about her. You're lying, she shrieked. You know damn well I'm not. My gaze shifted past her to Caitlin, who was trembling in the doorway. And you, my voice turned to ice. Caitlin, I provided for you for 10 years. I put food on your table and clothes on your back. And how did you repay me? By calling me a loser at every turn, by cheering your mother on as she brought other men home. The word ungrateful doesn't even begin to cover it. My stare terrified Caitlin. She took a step back, her lips trembling, unable to form a word. In the past, no matter what she said to me, I had always just taken it. She was used to my weakness. But now, the sheer force of my presence felt like being targeted by a predator, moments from being torn to shreds. I don't want to see either of you again. I delivered my final ultimatum, my tone leaving no room for argument. Be gone by dawn, or you'll face the consequences. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the small, dark storage closet that had served as my bedroom. The living room was left with a shell-shocked Vanessa and Caitlin, and Rick, who was on the verge of passing out from the pain. Vanessa stared at my retreating back, her eyes filled with a mixture of venom and confusion. What had happened to him? How could he change so completely overnight? She wouldn't accept it. She refused to believe the pathetic man she had walked all over for a decade would dare to treat her this way. Ethan Cole, you just wait. This isn't over, she hissed through clenched teeth. In my room, I paid her threats no mind. I opened the old, beat-up wardrobe, and from the very bottom, I retrieved a small wooden box I had treasured for 10 years. After blowing the dust off its surface, I opened it with a trembling hand. Inside, there were no jewels or gold, only a single, slightly yellowed photograph. In the photo, a beautiful, gentle woman leaned against a young man. The man was holding a little girl with pigtails. All three of them were smiling, their faces radiant with happiness. That was my real family. Ellie Lily. My fingers gently caressed their faces in the photograph, and the glacier of ice that had encased my heart for 10 years finally began to crack. My darling wife, my sweet daughter. Wait for me. I'm coming to take our home back. In my mind, the majestic voice echoed once more. Causality armament chrono anchor activated. Locating origin world coordinates. Lock successful. Return gateway construction initiated. Estimated time to completion, 72 hours. Warning. Host's actions during this period may attract the attention of this world's correctional force. Please proceed with caution. 72 hours. 3 days. I only had to wait 3 more days. I closed the box, my resolve hardening. For these next 3 days, I would take back everything this world owed me, with interest. The next morning, when I emerged from my room, the living room was empty. Vanessa, Caitlin, and the two-handed cripple Rick were gone. The half-eaten fruit platter from last night still sat on the coffee table, a chaotic mess. They had left in a hurry, not even bothering to pack their things. It seemed last night's display had left a significant impression. However, I didn't think for a second they would let it go, especially not Vanessa. A woman that profoundly selfish would never willingly give up a prime piece of real estate in the city center. I ignored the mess and went straight to the kitchen to make myself a proper breakfast. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't cooking for someone else. I was cooking for myself. After eating, I got to work. I started gathering every single thing in the apartment that belonged to Vanessa and Caitlin and methodically packing it all away. Their clothes, makeup, books, photos, anything that carried their presence was stuffed into large black trash bags. I worked with intense focus, as if performing a sacred ritual. With every item I threw away, the oppressive, suffocating atmosphere that had choked me for a decade began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of reclaiming my own space. Just as I was dragging the last bag to the door, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. A cold, menacing voice came through the speaker. Is this Ethan Cole? Speaking. You got some nerve. Your wife, Vanessa, is here with me right now. Cried her eyes out. Says you went crazy last night, beat her up, beat up Rick Wagner, and are trying to kick them out of their home. Is that right? I recognized the tactic immediately. Vanessa had called in reinforcements. Yes, I answered, my tone clipped. The man on the other end seemed taken aback by my frankness. He chuckled coldly. All right, I'll give you that. You got balls. I don't care what kind of drama you have with your wife, but you laid a hand on my people, and that's a direct insult to me. The name's Julian Vance. People around here call me Mr. Vance's son. Rick Wagner works for me and Vanessa. Let's just say she's a new friend of mine. I'll give you 1 hour. Get your ass down to the Dynasty Lounge, VIP room 888. You're going to get on your knees, apologize to my people, and then you're going to sign the deed to that apartment over to Vanessa. Do that, and we can forget this ever happened. Otherwise, he paused for dramatic effect, his voice dripping with menace. I guarantee you will regret ever being born. The Dynasty Lounge. Julian Vance. Flashes of information surfaced from the original owner's memories. Julian Vance was a major player in Crestfall City, with connections in both legitimate business and the criminal underworld. His father, Silas Vance, was one of the city's top kingpins. Julian rode his father's coattails, acting like an untouchable tyrant. He was a vicious predator everyone feared. For Vanessa to get in with him, she must have been desperate. Did you hear me, you pathetic piece of trash? Julian barked into the phone, annoyed by my silence. I spoke calmly. 1 hour? It won't take that long. Oh, so you've come to your senses? Smart man, Julian said with a smug laugh. What I mean is, I said, pausing to let the words sink in, you should all stay right where you are. I'm on my way over right now. I hung up before he could respond. In VIP room 888 at the Dynasty Lounge, Julian Vance stared at his phone for a full 3 seconds before his face contorted with rage. Son of a bitch, he roared, slamming the phone down on the table. That loser hung up on me. Is he threatening me? Vanessa, draped over his lap with tear streaks still on her face, immediately fanned the flames. See, Julian, I told you, Ethan's completely lost his mind. He thinks he's some kind of tough guy now. He has no respect for you at all. Nearby, Rick Wagner sat with both of his arms in casts, propped up by slings around his neck. Mr. Vance, you have to help me, he whined. That psycho was brutal. The doctor said the bones were shattered. I might be crippled for life. Julian's face was a dark thundercloud. He had originally just been interested in Vanessa for her looks, planning a short-term fling. When Rick came to him for help, he saw it as an easy win. Beat down some legendary local doormat, impress the beautiful woman, and reinforce his reputation all at once. He never imagined the doormat would have a spine of solid steel. Good. Very good. Julian seethed, a twisted smile spreading across his face. I want to see what this guy is made of. Who the hell does he think he is, challenging me in Crestfall City? Go on, get the boys. Tell them to bring the hardware. Today, I'm going to teach this motherfucker how to spell the word dead. A flash of vicious triumph lit up Vanessa's eyes. Ethan, you fool. You think because you found some courage you're untouchable? Next to Julian Vance, you're nothing. Today, I'm going to watch you kneel before me and beg like the dog you are. I didn't take an Uber. I walked to the Dynasty Lounge. I moved slowly, each step feeling like I was measuring the city I had inhabited for 10 years. The sun was warm on my skin. I could feel the power inside me, simmering, completely out of sync with this world. It was like boiling water in a fragile glass cup. Warning: host's emotional state is volatile. Risk of energy overflow detected. Excessive use of power may destabilize the return gateway. The system's warning appeared in my mind. I took a deep breath, calming the roiling energy within me. I understood. I couldn't be reckless yet. My goal was to go home. Nothing could jeopardize that. For these ants, a sledgehammer wasn't necessary. The Dynasty Lounge wasn't far, maybe a 20-minute walk. 2 imposing men in black suits stood guard at the entrance. They stopped me as I approached. Hold it. Where do you think you're going? I looked up at them, my expression placid. My name is Ethan Cole. Julian Vance is expecting me. The 2 men exchanged a look. One spoke in his radio, then gave me a malicious grin. Oh, so you're the loser. Mr. Vance has been waiting for you. Come with us. They flanked me, escorting me into the club. Everyone we passed gave me looks of pity or morbid curiosity. The story of Crestfall City's most pathetic man was well known. Now that he had crossed Julian Vance, his fate was sealed. They led me to the door of VIP room 888. One of them pushed the door open, revealing a room thick with cigarette smoke. Inside the massive suite, more than 20 muscle-bound thugs were scattered around, all of them with cruel sneers on their faces. They held steel pipes, baseball bats, and other assorted weapons. Julian Vance was sprawled on the central sofa, with Vanessa nestled against him like a pampered pet, looking at me as if I were already a corpse. Caitlin was there too, hiding behind her mother, her eyes a mixture of fear and morbid excitement. Seeing me walking alone, Julian smirked. Well, kid, you got guts, I'll give you that. Showing up by yourself. He stood and walked toward me, his height giving him a physical advantage as he looked down on me. So, have you thought about what I said? I scanned the room, my eyes passing over the faces of the armed thugs before finally settling on Julian. I have. Owen, Julian asked, his tone mocking. I spoke slowly, my voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Here's my decision. Every single one of you is going to get on your knees. Then, you're each going to break one of your own legs. If you do that, I might consider letting you live. The words hung in the air. The entire room went dead silent. Everyone stared at me like I was a lunatic. After a few seconds, the silence was shattered by an explosion of derisive laughter. Ha ha ha! Did I hear that right? This loser wants us to kneel. Did he get hit in the head last night? Is he brain damaged? Julian, stop wasting time with him. Just kill him. Julian was laughing the hardest, bent over and wiping tears from his eyes. This is great. This is really great. I've been running this town for years, and I've never met anyone with a death wish as strong as yours. His laughter died, and his face twisted into a demonic snarl. Since you want to do this the hard way, don't blame me for what happens next. He jerked his hand forward. Get him. Break every bone in his body, but leave him breathing. Yeah. With a unified roar, the 20-plus thugs surged forward, a tidal wave of violence and steel, ready to crash down on me. A cruel, excited smile spread across Vanessa's face. Caitlin squeezed her eyes shut, but curiosity forced her to peek through her fingers. In their minds, I was about to be torn to pieces, and yet I just stood there, perfectly still. Just as the first steel pipe was about to connect with my skull, I made my move. Chapter 4. The struggle of ants. My movement wasn't fast. In fact, it was deceptively slow. To everyone in the room, it looked like I casually raised my right hand and extended 2 fingers, index and middle. Then, with impossible precision, I caught the steel pipe as it whistled through the air. Ping! The sound was soft, like metal striking something infinitely harder. The heavy pipe swung with full force, stopped dead, less than an inch from my forehead, unable to move. The goon holding the pipe felt his sneer freeze on his face. An immense, irresistible force traveled up the pipe, jolting his entire arm and numbing it to the bone. How is that possible? The same thought flashed through every mind in the room. The laughter died instantly. Julian's smug expression stiffened. Vanessa and Caitlin stared, their eyes wide with utter disbelief. Too slow, I said, my voice barely a whisper. My fingers tightened. Snap! The solid steel pipe held between just 2 of my fingers broke in half. The break was perfectly clean, as if cut by a laser. A collective gasp went through the room. What? What is he? Before they could process the shock, I moved. There were no flashy techniques, just the simple, brutal efficiency of fists and feet. I took a single step, appearing directly in front of the goon with the broken pipe, and drove my fist into his chest. Thump! The man's body flew backward as if hit by a speeding truck, his chest visibly caving in. He slammed into the far wall with a sickening crunch and slid to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut, foam bubbling from his lips. It was too fast. The others hadn't even seen me move, and one of their own was already down. Fear spread through them like a virus. Get him! All at once! Kill him! Someone screamed, their voice strained. Bolstered by the cry, the remaining thugs charged again. My face was a mask of indifference. I moved through them like a phantom. Every strike was brutally simple and devastatingly effective. A punch shattered a man's nose. A kick obliterated another's kneecap. An elbow strike caved in a ribcage. The room filled with screams of agony and the wet crunch of breaking bones. These so-called tough guys, the hardened enforcers of the city's underworld, were like paper dolls in my hands. It was over in less than a minute. When I came to a stop back in my original position, there wasn't a single thug left standing. All of them were on the floor, groaning, writhing, and completely incapacitated. The room fell terrifyingly silent, the only sounds being labored breathing and pained whimpers. Julian was frozen in place, his legs trembling uncontrollably, his face the color of ash. Vanessa and Caitlin were huddled together, shaking, looking at me as if I were a demon. Is this really the same man who was a doormat for 10 years? The question hammered into their minds. It dawned on them with sickening certainty that they had been tormenting something far beyond their comprehension. I ignored their terror and began walking slowly toward Julian. In the silence, my footsteps sounded like a death knell. You stay away from me. Julian backed away in panic until his back hit the wall, leaving him with nowhere to run. Do you know who I am? My father is Silas Vance. If you touch me, my dad will kill you. He tried to sound threatening, playing his final, most powerful card. I stopped in front of him, looking down at his pathetic form with utter contempt. Silas Vance. I tilted my head, as if trying to recall the name. Julian thought he saw a flicker of fear and pressed his advantage. That's right, Silas Vance, the king of Crest Falls City. Get on your knees and apologize right now, and maybe I'll let you live. I smiled. In my eyes, he's just as much of an ant as you are. Before the words had even left my lips, I shot my hand out and clamped it around his throat, lifting him off the ground with one arm. Julian's feet dangled in the air. He clawed desperately at my arm, but it was like trying to break steel. His face turned a deep purple as the air was cut off, his eyes bulging. Let go, he choked out. Vanessa and Caitlin were on the verge of fainting. They had never witnessed such raw, terrifying violence. I gave you a chance. My voice was arctic cold. You didn't take it. My grip tightened. Julian's struggles grew weaker. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, I let go. He dropped to the floor in a heap, gasping greedily for air and coughing violently. The sheer terror had made him lose control of his bladder, a dark stain spreading across his expensive pants. I crouched down and patted his cheek. Go back and tell your father his son picked a fight with the wrong person. Tell him to get his affairs in order. In 3 days, I'll be paying him a personal visit. With that, I stood up, not sparing him another look. My gaze fell upon Vanessa and Caitlin, cowering in the corner. They flinched as if I had physically struck them. The smugness and malice were gone from Vanessa's face, replaced by pure, abject terror. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Caitlin had already burst into tears. Please, don't kill me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I looked at them without a shred of pity. You reap what you sow. I've already thrown your things out of the apartment, I stated, as if discussing the weather. As of today, you have no connection to that place. As for the two of you, I paused, watching the fear in their eyes. A cruel smile touched my lips. You can stay here and keep your dear Julian company. I imagine he's going to need someone to take care of him. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving a scene of carnage and broken men behind me. When I stepped out of the Dynasty Lounge, the afternoon sun was still bright. It was as if the brutal reality I had just left behind was nothing more than a bad dream. But I knew this was just the beginning. Silas Vance, the so-called king of Crest Falls City's underworld. He would be my final gift to Vanessa and Caitlin before I left this world for good. Chapter 5. The Truth of This World. After leaving the club, I didn't go straight home. The power coursing through me was still a wild, untamed thing. I needed a place to fully understand and control it. Besides, a question that had haunted me for 10 years demanded an answer. Why me? Why did the Abyssal Trader choose me and send me to this specific world, to these specific people? It couldn't have been a coincidence. I walked along the river until I reached an abandoned port. The place was deserted, the wind howling off the water. It was the perfect spot to think. I closed my eyes and sank my consciousness deep into my soul, where my own immense, original power resided. This power was my greatest asset, the very reason the Abyssal Trader could make a deal with me in the first place. For the last decade, it had been shackled by the contract and the laws of this world, completely inaccessible. But now, the chains were broken. I began to channel this power, using it to analyze the very fabric of the world around me. I quickly discovered something deeply wrong. This world was thin, brittle, like a poorly pirated movie. Its fundamental rules were full of glitches and inconsistencies. It was desperately trying to mimic a prime world, but the imitation was crude, twisted, and fundamentally broken. And that prime world was my home. A shocking theory began to form in my mind. This wasn't a true parallel universe. It was more like a projection, a failed copy. Just then, the majestic voice echoed in my mind again. This time, it wasn't a cold system prompt. It was an explanation. Host is detected probing the world's origin. Information access granted. Current world designation. Discarded timeline. Hashtag 734. World origin. A powerful causality disturbance. The plane crash in the prime world, host's origin world, caused a branching possibility. However, this possibility lacked the energy to evolve into a complete parallel timeline. It has become a discarded timeline, facing imminent collapse and annihilation. Nature of the abyssal trade. The host was placed into this discarded timeline to utilize the host's strong causal link to the prime world. The negative emotional energy endured by the host served as both an anchor and fuel to forcibly correct the prime world's timeline, achieving the objective of resurrection. I understood. It all made perfect sense. The deal was far more complex than I had ever imagined. The death of my wife and daughter had created a massive ripple in the fabric of my world. That ripple had spawned this broken, dying timeline. The abyssal trader had simply used this collapsing reality as an energy converter, and I was its engine. My pain, my humiliation, my decade of suffering, it was all high-grade fuel. In Vanessa and Caitlin. Target profile unlocked. Vanessa Thorne. Mirror entity, a negative causal projection of the prime world entity Eleanor Cole. Core traits are the inverse of the original. Fidelity is replaced by promiscuity, gentleness by cruelty, devotion to family by selfishness. Caitlin Thorne. Mirror entity, a negative causal projection of the prime world entity Lily Cole. Core traits are the inverse of the original. Adoration is replaced by contempt, closeness by alienation, gratitude by betrayal. Reading this, I felt as though I'd been struck by lightning. So that was it. No wonder when I first saw them, I felt a faint, disturbing familiarity in their features. I had dismissed it as a coincidence. Now I knew the truth. They were twisted, funhouse mirror reflections of my wife and daughter. The abyssal trader's methods were monstrously cruel. It sent me here to face two women who looked just enough like my beloved family to be a constant, stabbing reminder, but whose personalities were their polar opposites. It forced me to endure their absolute worst. This wasn't just physical hardship. It was a masterclass in psychological torture. Every time Vanessa brought a man home, it was a desecration of my memory of Ellie's love and faithfulness. Every time Caitlin spat an insult at me, it was a betrayal of my memory of Lily's innocent adoration. For 10 years, I had lived in that personalized hell. No wonder my energy collection had exceeded the quota. The negative energy generated by that kind of torment was 1,000 times more potent than simple humiliation. I let out a long, slow breath. The storm of emotion inside me subsided. Knowing the truth settled the last of my unease. I no longer felt any complex emotion toward Vanessa and Caitlin. All that was left was a cold, pure indifference. They weren't real people. They were just tools on my journey home, data phantoms generated by a dying world, twisted from the templates of my wife and daughter. Their entire purpose was to torment me and provide the fuel I needed. Now, the fuel had been collected. Their purpose was fulfilled. I opened my eyes and looked back toward the city. The sky seemed to have grown a shade darker. I could feel it. With my power unbound and my mission complete, this fragile world was accelerating toward its own demise. It wouldn't be long before everything here turned to dust. But before that happened, there was one last thing to do. Silas Vance, this world's kingpin, Vanessa's final hope, and the last bug that needed to be erased from his corrupted program. His downfall would be the perfect overture for this world's final collapse. I stood up and dusted myself off. My power was now settled, an extension of my will. I still couldn't unleash its full potential. But to deal with a mortal crime lord, it was more than enough. I took out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 10 years. It was time to tap into the resources and connections of my past life. The call connected. Hello. A voice, older but still strong, answered on the other end. It's me. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, trembling with emotion. Sir, you finally called. Marcus, I need you to run a name for me, I said calmly. Crest Falls City. Silas Vance. I want everything you can find on him. His enemies, his weaknesses, every dirty deal he's ever made. Half an hour. Send it to my email. Yes, sir. It's as good as done. Marcus replied without hesitation, asking no questions. I hung up and watched the boats on the river. Silas Vance, your little game of King of the Hill is about to end. Chapter 6. The Last Thrashing of a Dying Beast. Crestfall City, the Vance Estate. The sprawling, multi-acre compound was a testament to the power of Silas Vance, the king of the city's underworld. Inside the estate's main office, the air was thick with tension. Silas Vance, a man in his late 50s with a dark, brooding face, sat in his massive leather chair, listening silently to his son Julian's pathetic, blubbering account of the afternoon's events. "Dad, you have to get it back from me. That Ethan Cole. He's a psycho, a monster. He took out more than 20 of my guys all by himself, and he said he was going to pay you a visit, and that you should get your affairs in order." Julian recounted the story through tears and snot, exaggerating every detail. Silas's face remained impassive, but the rhythmic tapping of his finger on the polished mahogany desk betrayed his inner turmoil. Each tap made Julian jump. "Ethan Cole." Silas finally spoke, his voice a low rasp. "The loser who's been living with that Thorn woman for 10 years. "Yes, that's him, but he's not the same person anymore. Dad, he's not normal," Julian insisted, his body still shaking with residual fear. Silas said nothing, simply waving a hand to dismiss him. Once he was alone, Silas stood and walked to the armored window, looking out over his heavily guarded property. One man taking down 20 armed thugs. It sounded like something out of a comic book, but he knew his son. For all his faults, Julian wasn't creative enough to invent a story like that. "Interesting," Silas murmured, a dangerous glint in his eye. He had clawed his way to the top of Crestfall City's food chain over 30 years, starting as a street tough and becoming the king. He'd done it by being more ruthless than anyone else. He didn't care who this Ethan Cole was. Anyone who dared to challenge the Vance family had to be erased. Security, a bodyguard in a black suit, appeared silently behind him. "Give me the ghost," Silas ordered coldly. "Tell him money is no object. I want one man. I don't care if he's brought back dead or alive." "Yes, Mr. Vance." The bodyguard disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. The ghost was the top assassin in the region. Rumor had it he had over 100 kills to his name and had never failed a contract. In Silas's mind, hiring the ghost was the ultimate solution. This Ethan Cole was a dead man. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Caitlin were hiding out in a cheap motel room. They had been consumed by terror ever since fleeing the Dynasty Lounge. The image of Ethan, standing untouched amidst a pile of broken men, was burned into their minds. "Mom, what are we going to do? What happens now?" Caitlin huddled in a corner, hugging her knees, her body trembling. Is he going to come for us?" Vanessa's face was a grim mask. She lit a cigarette with a shaky hand and took a deep drag, but it did little to calm her nerves. "What are you afraid of?" she snapped, her voice brittle. "Julian has his father on it now. Silas Vance, he runs this city. You think Ethan can fight his entire organization? You think he can fight a bullet?" Even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. For 10 years, she had grown accustomed to a life of luxury and control. She couldn't accept that it was all gone. The apartment, the money, even her backup plan, Rick Wagner, was now a useless cripple. Her only hope was that the Vance family could solve her problem. "No, I'm not letting this happen." Vanessa's eyes took on a crazed glint. "That apartment is mine. No one is taking it from me. Ethan, you pathetic worm. You just wait. I'll make sure you end up in a ditch." She grabbed her phone and dialed a number. "Hey, it's me. I need you to spread a rumor. Tell everyone that the city's resident loser, Ethan Cole, somehow struck it rich. Say he's sitting on a pile of cash, at least a few million. Yeah, spread it far and wide. Make sure all the desperate types hear about it." After hanging up, a twisted smile spread across her face. She knew there were plenty of people in the city who would kill for that kind of money. No matter how tough Ethan was, could he fend off every greedy lowlife in Crestfall? She would see him torn apart by the very people he used to be. By the time I got home, it was getting dark. I took the large trash bags filled with Vanessa and Caitlin's belongings and dumped them unceremoniously into the apartment complex's dumpster. With that final act, I felt a sense of profound relief. The space, which had been tainted for a decade, was finally clean. An email from Marcus was waiting for me. The file on Silas Vance was terrifyingly comprehensive, detailing everything from his first dirty deal as a young man to his current portfolio of illegal enterprises. It even listed his mistresses and the schools his illegitimate children attended. This was the power of information. Laid bare like this, Silas Vance was nothing but a clown, stripped of all his secrets. I scanned the file, a cold smile on my lips. His weaknesses were more numerous than I had imagined. Just then, I felt it, the subtle, almost imperceptible prickle of killing intent. I looked up, my gaze sweeping across the window of the building opposite mine. A dark shape moved on the rooftop and then vanished. A sniper? No. The feeling was more intimate, more lethal. A professional. I turned off my computer and stood up, moving to the center of the living room as if I hadn't noticed a thing. A feint was cut through the air, coming from the window behind me. A steel needle, tipped with a potent neurotoxin, shot silently toward the base of my skull. The attack was perfectly timed and aimed, the work of a true master. The old me would have been dead before he hit the floor. But now, without turning around, I casually waved my hand behind me. Ting! I caught the needle between two fingers. Its tip glowed with a faint bluish hue. The ghost, I presume, I said, my voice calm, yet loud enough to carry across the distance. Outside, a man clad entirely in black froze, his eyes widening in shock. He was the ghost, the assassin hired by Silas Vance. He had been lying in wait for hours, convinced he had found the perfect moment to strike. But his kill shot, the one that had never failed, had been neutralized so effortlessly, and his target had just called him by name. Compromised. Panic flared in the ghost's chest. He didn't hesitate, spinning around to flee. Now that you're here, you might as well stay. My voice sounded as if it were whispered directly into his ear. The ghost's vision blurred. In the next instant, I was standing in front of him, having crossed the distance between the buildings in the blink of an eye. You! Gasping, the ghost drew a combat knife and lunged, aiming for my heart. His movements were a blur of deadly precision. To my eyes, he was moving in slow motion. I reached out and grabbed his wrist, then squeezed gently. Crack! The sound of shattering bone was sharp in the night air. The ghost let out a muffled grunt, the knife clattering to the rooftop. I followed up with a swift kick to his knee. Crack! His leg buckled. The ghost collapsed to his knees, sweat beading on his forehead. His legendary speed and skill were a complete joke. Who sent you? I asked, looking down at him, my voice devoid of warmth. The ghost gritted his teeth and said nothing. He had a code. Not talking. I smiled faintly. That's fine. I have ways of making you talk. I placed my hand on the top of his head. A pure stream of my own soul force flooded his mind, brutally tearing down his mental defenses and rifling through his memories. Soul Scour, a minor trick I had picked up since my awakening. Ah! The ghost let out a blood-curdling scream, his eyes rolling back in his head as his body convulsed. The feeling of having one's very soul ripped apart was 1,000 times worse than any physical pain. A few seconds later, I released him. He slumped to the ground, a drooling, catatonic shell of a man. I had everything I needed. Silas Vance, the Vance estate, and the rumor Vanessa had started about my newfound wealth. They just don't know when to quit. I shook my head, a flash of killing intent in my eyes. It seemed a clear message was in order. These flies just wouldn't stop buzzing. I took out my phone and checked the time. 9 p.m. A perfect time to pay a house call. Chapter 7. A river of blood. The night was as black as ink. The Vance estate was brightly lit, a fortress operating under a state of high alert. Silas Vance sat in his office, sipping tea with a growing sense of unease. It had been over 3 hours, and he still hadn't heard from the ghost. A dark premonition began to creep into his mind. Suddenly, the office door flew open. Dad, it's Bad. He's here. Julian stumbled into the room, his face a mask of pure terror. Who's here? Silas shot to his feet. Ethan Cole. He's fighting his way in. As if on cue, a symphony of screams and alarms erupted from outside the estate. Silas rushed to the window, his face grim. There, at the main gate, was a lone figure walking calmly forward. Behind him, more than a dozen of his best guards were scattered across the ground, unconscious or worse. The estate's security alarms blared as more guards swarmed from every direction, surrounding me. How does he dare? Silas couldn't believe his eyes. This was his sanctuary, the most feared location in Crestfall City. For 30 years, no one had ever dared to launch a direct assault. Shoot him! Shoot him! Kill him now! Julian shrieked hysterically. His order was unnecessary. The guards already had their instructions. The night exploded with the roar of gunfire. Bang! 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 Dozens of handguns opened fire simultaneously, unleashing a hailstorm of bullets. To Silas and Julian, it was an undeniable reality. No man, no matter how skilled, could survive that. But what happened next shattered their understanding of the world. I didn't even flinch. As the bullets flew toward me, they suddenly slowed, stopping dead mid-air about a yard from my body, as if they had hit an invisible wall. Then, they simply fell to the ground with a cascade of soft clinks. A psionic shield, one of the most basic abilities I had awakened. Everyone stared, dumbfounded. The gunfire stopped. A dead silence fell over the estate. The guards looked from the pile of useless lead slugs at my feet to my completely unharmed body, their faces etched with disbelief and terror. It's a demon, one of them whispered. That was all it took. Their professional discipline shattered. Run, he's a monster. They dropped their weapons and fled in every direction, screaming. I ignored them, my eyes fixed on the two figures standing in the second-floor office window. A cold smile touched my lips. I lifted my foot and brought it down with a gentle stomp. Boom! An invisible shockwave radiated out from me. The entire estate trembled as if hit by a small earthquake. Every window in the main house instantly shattered into a million pieces. In the office, Silas and Julian were thrown off their feet. What? What kind of power is this? Silas's voice was laced with genuine fear. He finally realized he hadn't provoked a man. He had provoked a god. I didn't wait. My form blurred, and I vanished from the lawn. A split second later, I reappeared inside the office, as silent as a ghost. You, Silas, and Julian recoiled, as if they had seen death itself. Mr. Vance, I said, my smile as cold as a winter morning. I'm here. Is your coffin ready? Silas, a man forged in violence, forced himself to remain calm. Don't get cocky, Cole, he snarled. I've already called the police. They'll be here any minute. No matter how tough you are, you can't fight the government. The police? I chuckled. And you think they'll even find me when they get here? His blood ran cold. What? What do you want? He finally asked, his voice shaking. It's simple. I held up a finger. First, you will dismantle your entire criminal enterprise. Every dirty dollar you've ever made gets donated to charity. Second, you will turn yourself in and confess to every crime you've committed over the past 30 years. And third, my gaze shifted to the trembling form of Julian. You will break both his arms and both his legs. He wanted to do that to me yesterday. Now he'll get to experience it himself. He'll spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Each condition was like a knife twisting in Silas's heart. Impossible, he roared. I built this empire over 30 years. You think you could just walk in here and take it all away? You're dreaming. It seems you still don't understand the situation, I said, shaking my head in disappointment. I was done talking. I reached out a hand, and an invisible force seized Julian by the throat, lifting him into the air. No, please, Dad, help me. Julian choked, clawing at his neck. Let him go. Silas screamed, his eyes wild. He yanked open a desk drawer, pulled out a pistol, and aimed it at me. I just looked at him with pity. Do you really think that toy can hurt me? With a mere thought, the gun in Silas's hand twisted and crumpled like a piece of tinfoil, falling from his grasp as a useless lump of metal. That was the final blow. Silas Vance, the king of Crestfall City, finally broke. All his power, all his influence, was utterly meaningless in the face of this thing. I'll do it. I'll do it. Just let my son go, he screamed, his voice cracking with despair. See, that wasn't so hard. I released my hold, and Julian crashed to the floor, gasping for air. Remember what I said? I told Silas, my voice a deadly whisper. If I don't see the results I want by sunrise tomorrow, I'll be back. And next time, it won't just be the two of you who die. With that, my form began to fade, becoming translucent until I vanished completely, leaving them in their shattered, silent office. Long after I was gone, Silas Vance remained on the floor, looking as if he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. He knew, with absolute certainty, that the reign of the Vance family was over. Crestfall City was about to change forever. And it was all because they had crossed the wrong man. Chapter 8. The World Ends. The final judgment, the fall of the Vance Empire, was even swifter than I had anticipated. The next morning, an unprecedented earthquake shook Crestfall City to its core. Silas Vance, the untouchable kingpin, walked into a police station and confessed to 3 decades of crime, implicating a vast network of corrupt officials and business leaders. Simultaneously, all known Vance-controlled enterprises were dissolved, and billions of dollars were anonymously donated to various charities. As for Julian Vance, he was the victim of a tragic accident at home that left him a quadriplegic. The city was in an uproar. No one could understand what had triggered the sudden, total collapse of its most powerful criminal dynasty. As the architect of it all, I simply waited peacefully at home for the return gateway to open. Return gateway construction. 85% complete, less than a day to go. I could feel this world's decay accelerating. The sky was a permanent, sickly gray. Strange glitches were starting to appear in reality. A person on the street would get stuck in a looping animation, or a car would vanish from one spot and reappear in another. Most people didn't notice these subtle tears in the fabric of their existence. But to me, the world's source code was clearly unraveling. It was like a video game in its final moments before the servers were shut down for good. Just then, my doorbell rang. Surprised, I opened the door to find 2 haggard, terrified faces. Vanessa and Caitlin. The arrogance and cruelty were gone, replaced by a deep, soul-crushing fear. Ethan. Vanessa's voice was a trembling whisper. Please, you have to help us. Caitlin dropped to her knees on the spot, sobbing hysterically. Uncle Ethan. No, I'm sorry, Dad. I was wrong. I was horrible to you. Please, don't let us die. I didn't invite them in, just leaned against the doorframe and watched them. How did you find me? The news. Vanessa stammered. The Vance family. It's all gone. We knew it had to be you, the world. It's falling apart. Things are getting so weird. And all those criminals who heard the rumor about you having money. They can't find you. So now they're coming after us. Please, for the sake of the last 10 years, please let us stay here. So, they had finally noticed the world was ending, and they had figured out that I was their only hope for survival. How ironic. The last 10 years. I repeated the words, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. The sound was filled with a decade's worth of mockery. You mean the 10 years you treated me like a dog? The 10 years you brought your lovers home to flaunt in my face? Or the 10 years she spent calling me a pathetic, spineless loser? Each question was a hammer blow, striking them with the full weight of their past actions. Their faces went deathly pale. We were wrong. We know we were wrong. Vanessa begged, tears streaming down her face. Ethan, we were married. You can't just leave us to die. Mary, I looked at the face that was a pale imitation of my Ellie's, now contorted by selfishness and fear. My expression turned to ice. Vanessa, you don't have the right to even say that word. You and her were nothing more than the price of my passage home. You were the suffering I had to endure, the fuel needed to resurrect my real wife and daughter. Now my fuel tank is full. Your existence has become meaningless. My words struck them like a physical blow. Fuel, resurrect his real wife and daughter? It made no sense to them, but they understood the cold finality in my tone. No, you can't do this to us. Vanessa finally snapped, lunging at me in hysterical rage. Ethan, you liar, you deceived us for 10 years. You'll burn in hell for this. I simply waved a hand, and an invisible force sent her sprawling to the ground. I looked down at them, a pair of pitiful, corrupted data files about to be deleted. Your fate was sealed the moment my contract was completed. This world is ending, and you, as this world's negative mirrors, will dissolve along with it. This is your destiny. This is the judgment you have earned. Without another word, I slowly closed the door, shutting out their screams and curses. Click! The lock engaged, sealing them outside with their despair. On the other side of the door, Vanessa and Caitlin slumped to the floor, their faces ashen. They finally understood. It was over. Their cruelty, their arrogance, their selfishness, it had all led them to this. Annihilation. Inside, I walked to the window and watched the world outside twist and distort. The system's voice sounded in my mind one last time. Return gateway construction complete. Initiate immediate return. I took a deep breath, my heart filled with a resolve and anticipation that transcended 10 years of suffering. Yes, Chapter 9. One step from hell to heaven. The moment I gave the command, the space before me began to ripple like the surface of a pond. A shimmering, oval-shaped portal of soft white light materialized in the center of the room. From the other side, I could feel a familiar, warm energy, the essence of my home, of my real world. 10 years. I had finally made it. My hand was already on the threshold, ready to step through. But just then, the majestic voice of the abyssal trader echoed in my mind one final time. Esteemed contractor, Mr. Ethan Cole, congratulations on the perfect fulfillment of your contract. As a bonus for exceeding the required energy quota, you are granted one additional choice. Option 1. Return with all the powers you have awakened during this transaction. Your soul origin has merged with the causality armament, and you will become a transcendent being in your prime world, possessing power and longevity far beyond that of any mortal. Option 2. Forfeit all power. All of your awakened energy will be repurposed as a stabilization and beautification agent for the corrected timeline. Not only will your wife and daughter be resurrected, but their fates and the fate of your entire family will be guided toward the most perfect, blissful possible outcome. The plane crash will be erased at its source, and all factors that could have led to misfortune will be preemptively eliminated by causality. You will return as an ordinary man to live a flawlessly happy life. Please make your choice. A choice. Another choice. To become a god, a being of immense power, or to become a man, a husband and father with a guarantee of perfect happiness. There was no hesitation, not even for a nanosecond. Power, a long life. What meaning did any of that have without them? I endured a decade in hell, not to become a superhero. I did it just to go home, to see Ellie's gentle smile again, to hear Lily call me daddy, to wake up every morning and see their sleeping faces beside me, to watch the sunset with them every evening. That was all I ever wanted. I choose to. I answer with my soul. Choice confirmed. Stripping causality armament. Success. Reclaiming host transcendent power. Success. All energy has been injected into the chrono anchor. Final corrections to the prime world timeline are in progress. I felt it then, the immense power draining from me like a receding tide. The feeling of absolute control vanished. My body was reverting to that of a normal man. I felt no regret, only a profound sense of relief. I looked out the window one last time. The discarded world was collapsing in on itself. Buildings dissolved like sandcastles in the wind. The ground split open, revealing an endless void beneath. On the street below, the forms of Vanessa and Caitlin flickered and grew transparent, their faces locked in expressions of eternal despair and regret. Then, along with the world they inhabited, they disintegrated into motes of light and vanished forever. It was finished. I turned away from the window and gave the prison that had held me for 10 years one last look. It contained my most painful memories. But those memories were now the foundation of my future happiness. Goodbye, hell. I lifted my foot and, without looking back, stepped through the white portal. One step from hell to heaven. Chapter 10. Home. At last the light faded. I slowly opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was the familiar pattern of my own bedroom ceiling. The air smelled of sunshine and bacon. I was lying in my own soft, comfortable bed. I shot upright and looked around. This was my room, our room, the one Ellie and I had decorated together after we got married. Our wedding photo was still hanging on the wall, the two of us smiling, so young and in love. This was real. I threw off the covers and ran out of the bedroom. The living room, the dining room, the balcony. Everything was exactly as I remembered it, warm and bright and full of life. Honey, you're awake. What's the rush? You're running around like you're late for something. My body went rigid. That voice, the voice I had replayed in my mind for 10 agonizing years. I walked toward the kitchen, my legs trembling. There she was, an apron tied around her waist, humming a little tune as she expertly flipped a pancake on the griddle. She felt my presence and turned around, gracing me with a smile so warm it could melt glaciers. "What are you doing just standing there, silly? Go get washed up. Breakfast is almost ready. Don't forget, it's the parent-teacher conference at Lily's preschool today. We can't be late." It was her. It was my Ellie, my wife, standing right in front of me, alive, smiling. My eyes instantly filled with tears. For 10 years, I had survived in that cold, dark hell by clinging to the memory of this smile. And now here it was. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Seeing my tears, Ellie walked over, her face creased with concern. She gently touched my forehead. "Are you feeling okay? Did you have a nightmare?" I couldn't hold back any longer. I pulled her into my arms, hugging her with all my strength, as if I could merge her very being with my own. "Ellie, Ellie." I choked out her name over and over again. She was surprised by my sudden intensity, but hugged me back, gently rubbing my back. "Sure, it's okay, I'm here. It was just a bad dream. It's over now." I buried my face in her hair, inhaling her scent, the scent I had missed more than life itself. Just then, a tiny figure padded out of a bedroom, rubbing her eyes. She had adorable pigtails and was wearing pink unicorn pajamas. Seeing us hugging, she chirped, "Daddy, Mommy, are you playing the hug game? I want to play too." "Lily, my daughter." I let go of Ellie and dropped to my knees, opening my arms wide. "Lily, Daddy." She launched herself into my arms like a little pink cannonball. I held her tight, feeling the warmth of her small body against mine. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Lily asked, reaching up with her tiny hand to wipe a tear from my cheek. "Daddy's not crying," I said, even as more tears fell. "Daddy's just so happy." Ellie knelt beside us, wrapping her arms around both of us. "What am I going to do with you two?" she asked, her voice full of love. The three of us stayed there, wrapped in a group hug. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing us in its warm, gentle glow. I glanced up at the calendar on the wall. The date was the same as the day the plane crash was supposed to have happened, 10 years ago. The abyssal traitor hadn't just brought them back from the dead. It had rewritten reality. It had gone to the source and erased the tragedy completely. The crash never happened. The 10 years I spent in hell were nothing more than a long, vivid nightmare. And now I was awake. I was home. "Okay, time to go brush your teeth, sleepyhead daddy." Lily giggled, squirming in my arms. "All right, let's go together." I laughed, lifting her up and kissing her rosy cheek. "Ellie," I said, "I'm not going to work today." "Oh, why not?" "Today," I said, my eyes drinking in the sight of my beautiful, living family, "I just want to be with you. From this day forward, I would cherish every single second. I would never let them go again."